Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about ROCD and cheating OCD. This is kind of like a niche subtype that I thought in the beginning was like so uncommon and didn't exist, and that I was the only one suffering with it. But when I started talking to people and opening up and sharing my story, I realized that there were so many other people who struggled with the same thing. So I'm going to break down a little bit what having ROCD can be like, the version I suffered with, and then how I got better from it. So ROCD can show up in a lot of different ways. And for me, primarily, it showed up in my relationship, my romantic relationship. So me and my partner started dating around 2020, and the first, few months were fine. He knew of my anxiety and my OCD, but it got worse as time went on. So the cheating OCD part was that I would have these intrusive thoughts about other men, like sexual intrusive thoughts, and they would, like I said, be sexual thoughts about other men while I was in this relationship. Or I would be at the gym or Starbucks or anywhere, and I would notice an attractive man and I would think they're attractive. And then after those thoughts, I would have the thought, oh my gosh, like, am I cheating on my partner emotionally? Do I want to cheat? Whole thing. And then those thoughts made me feel like a terrible person, and that I was unfaithful, and that I was a terrible partner, and that I didn't deserve to be with anyone. And then the compulsion that came along was confessing. So confessing my intrusive thoughts to him, and any kind of interaction that I had with a man throughout the day, I would confess to him because I felt like if I didn't tell him that I was lying and that I was a liar and our whole relationship was built on a lie. That's how quickly a simple thought of somebody else is attractive escalated into a spiral and into something so much more bigger than what should have been. And so that's kind of cheating OCD, but our OCD can pretty much be about anything in terms of a relationship. I've heard people say that some of the thoughts they have are, what if I don't love my partner enough? What if he doesn't love me enough? What if I find something about them not attractive, like their nose, and I'm fixated on that, and that must mean that I don't love them, and that I should break up with them, or I don't always feel 100% in love or attracted. Does that mean I should break up with them? So those are all kinds of thoughts that ROCD can come up with. I didn't really struggle too much with that one. That is, I think, probably the most common form of like relationship OCD. Like I said, the one I struggled with was like the cheating OCD. And so for both of them, reassurance seeking is a huge compulsion because you're so nervous, and confession is a huge compulsion because you're nervous that these thoughts make you a bad person. Um, and it could even have impulses like break up with your partner, even when that's not what you want to do. And it's just, thoughts in your head. OCD can be very, very convincing. And that's the scary part. It can convince you of things that aren't true. It can tell you things that aren't true. And because we have OCD, we get nervous, like, what if it is true? And like I said, we go into that spiral. And so for me specifically, at the time, I was working at a gym and I was interacting with men a lot. And so I would have to explain every single interaction to my partner and tell him, because I thought that if I didn't, like I said, I was a liar, I wasn't truthful, and all of that. And at first, my partner was dealing with it, and he was saying, okay, like, I believe you, whatever. Um, but then the more that I confessed, the more it drained him and really started to stress him out. And think about it. If you're in a relationship, you don't want to hear your partner say that they found somebody else attractive. And here's the thing though, that is a normal human thought. Finding other people attractive while you're in a relationship does not mean that you're a cheater or that you're not faithful. Everybody experiences these human emotions, whether we're in a relationship or we're not. We don't stop finding people attractive because we're dating someone, and that's okay. I always say that love is a choice, and you choose to be faithful to your partner and choose your partner every day. And it's okay if you have a thought about somebody else because you're human. That's normal. Everybody experiences it, but people with OCD tend to grab onto it and make it something bigger than it is because they're so nervous, and their brain is telling them all these false lies. So for me, it got really bad like 8 or 9 months into the relationship where I was confessing like every single day. And like I said, your partner does not want to hear that you found somebody else attractive or that you had a sexual thought about somebody else, because some things you just don't need to share in a relationship. Like, that's normal. Like, it is what it is. Like I said, we're human beings and it's part of the human experience. Um, and so it got to the point where he was like, I can't take these confessions anymore. One, they don't feel good. And two, it's just like it's constant, it's all the time, and it's really draining me. And we're not focusing on like the fun part of the relationship, and having fun with each other, was constantly confessing and asking for reassurance. I would always ask, you still love me? Do you still want to be with me? After I would confess about something, because I was still looking for reassurance. And that should show you that when you confess, when you give into these compulsions, it doesn't help, because like 5 minutes later, you're asking again for reassurance. So it just shows that it's a cycle. And the more that we feed the cycle, the bigger and stronger it grows. But when we learn to delay or stop the compulsions, that's when you will like learn to experience freedom. And so for me, that's when I started intensive therapy, because it got to the point where my partner said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to go to a therapist that specializes in OCD, because at the time I was just seeing a therapist for anxiety. And she even recommended that I go somewhere that is more is more for people with OCD. And so I ended up finding a place, nearby that I went to, and the first thing we did was make a hierarchy of all my obsessions. And the point of exposure therapy is to expose yourself to these fears and practice response prevention. And that's where your brain kind of starts like rewiring itself. So my therapist had me doing, all kinds of exposures that related to my ROCD and my cheating OCD. And at first it was really, really hard, and I was having a really difficult time resisting. And I was confessing sometimes, and for a while, I didn't feel like I was making any progress or getting better. And it was really hard because I was in therapy like 3 to 4 hours a week doing exposures, and I just wanted to get better. But my therapist reminded me that, it doesn't happen overnight, and recovery like takes time, and you have to do the work, and it will pay off. You just have to be patient. And so about 6 to 9 months in, I started feeling a lot better. It like something just like clicked in me, and I was able to resist compulsions, or if I wasn't, I was able to delay them for a couple hours. And I realized I was able to do things like interact with men, have a thought maybe, and not go and confess to my partner. Like, I was getting really good at resisting compulsions because I practiced so much. And that's what happens when you do something enough times, it becomes easier. And it's the same for delaying or not doing compulsions. It's like your brain, once you stop giving in, it starts to rewire itself, and you start to get used to it, and it gets easier. So it took a couple months to get there, but it did. And when that happened, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder, and it felt like all the hard work that I'd put in for months was finally paying off. Here I am now, 4 years later. Just got married a month ago. I'm still with my partner who I was having these issues with years ago, and I don't even confess anymore. Like, I can't remember the last time I made a confession. I have all kinds of thoughts like a normal human being. Some of them I don't like, and some of them I do, but I've learned to just accept them and know that just because I think something, it doesn't make it true. It doesn't, it's not the truth. Your thoughts don't have like a special meaning about you. Like, we're just human beings and we have weird thoughts sometimes, and that's okay. And so with exposure therapy and radical acceptance, those two things together played a huge role in my recovery. And it was because of exposure response prevention treatment, which I explained, doing those exposures over time. That is what got me through everything. And one of the hardest exposures I did, but I think it was probably the most powerful, was writing a script of my worst case scenario coming true. And obviously that related to cheating on my partner. I would write the script with my therapist. I would record it. I would play it back. I would read it to her. And the idea was that over time, because I was doing it so much, my brain would get used to it and not feel so anxious, because it's not scary anymore the more times you do something. And so that happened. It didn't happen overnight, but it did happen. And that was probably one of the biggest exposures I did. And it was so difficult, but, I went at my own pace, and like I said, it got easier and it paid off because here I am now and I don't struggle with this anymore. My life isn't ruled by OCD. It's ruled by my values, and that's what's important, and that's what you have to remember when you're struggling with any form of OCD, to lean into your values, lean into what you know is true about yourself. So if this sounds like you, if you're dealing with ROCD or any kind of OCD, I just really want to encourage you that there is treatment and there is help out there that can really help you. If you've been doing, regular therapy for a while and you haven't found that you're getting better, that's because OCD actually requires a specific type of therapy, and ERP, exposure response prevention, is the most effective form of treatment for people who have OCD. If you are looking to start your recovery journey, you can go to nocd.com and they will help you start that journey and help you find a therapist that will meet your needs and will help you through this difficult process. Like I said, it's difficult, but it is worth it. And it all paid off in the end because now I'm living a life that isn't controlled by OCD. And I want anybody who is watching this who's also struggling to know that too, that there is life after OCD. You can live a big, beautiful, fulfilling life where OCD is in the background. And like I said, I encourage you to make that first step. Check out NoCD and they will help you with your journey. I hope this video was helpful and I'll see you next time. Bye.